Well, here we are. Five Nights at Freddy's 3, perhaps the single most important game to me that has ever been made. If you're new here, it was Five Nights at Freddy's 3 that allowed everything on this channel to happen. 5 years ago today exactly, I had such a burning passion for this specific FNaF game that not only was it the topic of my first video on this channel, but my second video as well. FNaF 3 inspired so much passion in me, so much love, that it was what made me decide that I needed an outlet to discuss it. I needed to yap about it, regardless of if anyone listened. And one story I don't get to tell often is that for a year after that video was posted, nobody actually did listen. When my FNaF 3 video was uploaded, it sat on my channel with next to no views until December of 2021, when something I never could have predicted happened. Security Breach released, and with the explosion of mainstream popularity that game gave to the franchise, suddenly my little FNaF 3 video I made in March was on everyone's recommended page. Me choosing to make that shitty little video out of nothing but love, expecting absolutely nothing in return, ended up being the best long-term investment I could have ever made. And now, here we are, 5 years later, talking about this game all over again. I've since made a career out of expressing my passions not too differently to how I did all that time ago. And with that experience and me growing and changing over the course of this half a decade, I was left to wonder how my feelings may have changed about this game in all that time. Cause, I'm no stranger to the fact that my opinions change quite frequently as I experience new things. A game I may have loved in the moment may be one I don't feel as fondly for years later, and vice versa. And with this game, I had felt like my opinion on it being my favorite in the entire series was a very hot take to begin with. So when I got to revisiting it, I didn't know what to expect. Was it still going to be my most cherished FNaF game? Had it fallen off completely and become one I hated? Or was my opinion more neutral? Before I even opened the game to form any new opinions, I wanted to first figure out what it was that made me love it so much to begin with. Why was this specific entry the one I held in such high regard? Well, the first thing that came to mind above all else was the anticipation of when this game was coming out. I talked pretty extensively in the last video about the excitement that buzzed around the FNaF community when a new game was getting teased, and if you thought the hype for FNaF 2 was insane, you should have been there for FNaF 3. By the time this game was getting its teasers, FNaF was no longer just a small indie success being played by YouTubers. It was an internet phenomena. This franchise had a community now. It had dedicated YouTubers and fan artists and fan game developers. So when a third installment was beginning to be teased, you already had a massive community that was all losing their collective shit in unison for every single teaser. We aren't just talking theory videos or speculation anymore. We are talking full-on fan games that were specifically designed for the express purpose of predicting what FNaF 3 was going to be before it was even fully announced. We had hoax images of a hypothetical Freddyland, games that advertise themselves as being FNaF 3, which Scott would eventually make change their names to avoid confusion. We had fake videos of what FNaF 3 was gonna look like. This game hadn't even been announced yet, and the community was already so ravenous for more content that people just took it upon themselves to make it. Pair all that with how mysterious each teaser was for this game when it eventually was announced, and you have what was probably the most hyped I and the internet had ever been for any game in this series. Actually taking a look at these teasers, it was apparent this time around that what Scott was aiming for before this game's release was encouraging theories and discussion. The first teaser alone was a black screen with text that simply read offline on Scott Games, leading to some to believe that Scott intended to go on some kind of hiatus following the release of FNaF 2, something we would quickly realize was not true as brightening the teaser revealed a hidden message that read, "Until next time," in the bottom left corner. This teaser was very important because not only was it our first clue that something new was coming, but it set a precedent for teasers to follow. A hidden message that could only be revealed to FNaF fans once they tampered with the image. Something you will very quickly realize after this point is that teasers FNaF 3 and onwards were never as they initially presented themselves. Scott loved to encourage further speculation by hiding pieces of a bigger puzzle either in the images themselves, the titles, or sometimes even the source code of the website. These teasers went from simple images meant to build up hype to a micro ARG with every single new FNaF release. And I won't lie, this may have been the coolest part about the build up to every old Click Team era FNaF game. There was just something so magical about feeling like I was contributing and taking part in trying to figure out what was going on with each new teaser. When you knew what kind of tricks Scott liked to pull, you could go through each one like a little checklist, seeing if anything could provide further clues and provide any new context as to the plots of each new FNaF release. Anyways, not getting too sidetracked here, shit would get even more insane after this initial offline image was posted when we would eventually get our first true teaser of what this next installment was going to be about. An image of an extremely withered, broken animatronic we'd never seen before, veiled in darkness, with the message, "I am still here," and a 3 hidden in the corner of the teaser for those who brightened it. This teaser right here sparked the single most interesting bit of speculation I think any of the FNaF games had before their releases. The speculation of who this new animatronic was. We had never seen this guy before, and yet everyone wanted to try and take a stab to get ahead of the rest by guessing who it could possibly be. The strange, yellowish coloration led to many believing it was Golden Freddy. The way the render was lit caused a few to mistakenly think this new character had razor-sharp teeth, leading to some thinking it was Foxy. And I, personally, believed it was going to be a version of Bonnie, just because it was common knowledge at the time that Bonnie was Scott's favorite. Yeah, not the craziest justification for my theory in the world, but keep in mind I was like 11 at the time, and not to spoil my story time here, but you already know who was right, so you can't give little me shit. This speculation would continue and become more interesting with each new teaser for the game, giving us more bits and pieces as we went. We'd get a teaser depicting the toy animatronics from the previous game, now scrapped and discarded, this new character in the darkness of the image, and not long after, the thing that would shake the community to its core. The FNaF 3 teaser trailer, which would show us not only a glimpse at the new, dilapidated location this game would take place in, but also would reveal to us that this new character was indeed a variant of Bonnie. I told you, little me was cooking. I was media literate even back then. Okay, tooting my own horn aside, these two reveals were massive and sparked so much intrigue in the community, especially alongside the messages that were shown in between each clip of this trailer. He will come back. He always does. We have a place for him. Who was this character the trailer was referring to? Was it the new animatronic? Why is he in this new building? What is this new building? So many questions that continue to perplex the community, and before we had any time to process it, even more information became readily available. A Steam page for the game would go up revealing it took place 30 years after the closing of the Freddy's in the first game, and rather than being set in a pizzeria, it was a horror attraction. And that is not all, because as well as that, hidden on an announcement for the game being greenlit back when that was a thing on Steam, Scott left a message revealing this character's name. Combing through the announcement, fans discovered several instances of letters being doubled up. Letters that spelt out, "My name is Springtrap." Springtrap? That was an odd name for an animatronic. So much so that people just decided it wasn't his name leading up to the game's release. Seriously, this guy got called everything but Springtrap, Salvage, Hybrid, Golden Bonnie, the list goes on. Hell, I even remember watching an 8-bit gaming video at the time that speculated Springtrap referred to a game mechanic rather than a character, which... yeah, theory videos at the time really were just throwing shit at the wall, I won't lie. The continued madness of speculating about this game's release would only get worse the more teasers we'd get. Images of the map of the building, text from the teaser trailer repeated with a purple hue, and perhaps most interestingly, a pair of teasers revealing the existence of what looked like burnt versions of Balloon Boy, Withered Foxy, and Classic Chica. These teasers were a big deal because every bit of advertising for this game had one thing in common. One thing I'm sure you gathered from my mere description of them. The existence of only one animatronic in this game. Scott made sure to communicate constantly that only one character remained, and yet here, so near the release of the game, we got to see the return of these old characters with new appearances in the same glowing pupils as Springtrap. What did this mean? Our questions would not take long to be answered, as these teasers would come out mere days before the official release of FNaF 3 on March 2nd, 2015. And with it, we'd be able to see the payoff that came from months of absurd speculation and hype. Was the community correct in their theories? Was the new animatronic a fusion of the original 4 animatronics from FNaF 1? Were the scrapped toy animatronics going to be used to build some new amalgam that would hunt us down? Was Sparky the dog truly going to be here? So many theories, so much mystery, and with our hands on FNaF 3, all our questions could finally be answered. So, I suppose you're now wondering, how was this game received? Well, being completely honest, not great. Like, people didn't hate FNaF 3, don't get me wrong, the reception wasn't the worst, but I found when the game came out, it wasn't met with the same extreme, unanimous love that FNaF 2 had received. Looking back at the reception of content creators who play it, you could feel a certain, I don't know, distaste for the game, for lack of a better term. Like, when they first got their hands on it, they were losing their minds, but by night 5, when they had gone into the gameplay loop, you could feel that enthusiasm had largely faded. The same could not be said for me, however, because despite the general apathy FNaF 3 got, it easily had become my favorite game in the entire trilogy. So, with all that preamble said, what was it that made me feel that way compared to many others? Why this specific game? Well, answering it as simply and bluntly as possible, the presentation and art style of FNaF 3 is my favorite from any FNaF game, and it isn't close. While FNaFs 1 and 2 were focused on delivering the vibe of a children's restaurant after hours, FNaF 3 flipped the series' art style on its head by giving us something that was specifically designed to be gross and grungy and unappealing to the eyes and green. Taking one look at this game shows a disconnect between it and its two predecessors. Gone is the eerie pizzeria, and in its place, a disgusting, rotted horror attraction, where the characters that once hunted us from the previous installments are nothing but jack-o'-lantern-esque light fixtures. Mix that aesthetic with the fact that this was a much more isolated, vulnerable experience where the chaos of 11 animatronics was traded for what felt like a boss fight with one extremely dangerous animatronic, and you had the recipe for my ideal FNaF experience. And funnily enough, the reason I think this one didn't jive with people nearly as well. Yeah, the grungier look of the building appealed to me a ton, but something like this was a far departure from what the fandom was used to, and I feel like it didn't hit for everyone. That and the gameplay, which seemed to confuse people a lot on their first time playthroughs, with there being a lot going on that the game didn't really explain all that well. All the reasons I loved FNaF 3 ended up being reasons many in the community didn't share my same passion. But those were my thoughts 5 years ago now. I've had all of my adult life up to this point to completely change the way I view and review media. So, what would an up-to-date version of my thoughts look like? That was the question that I wanted to answer. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize my webcam was on. I often film myself saying these things when I'm wearing my new awesome sweater that you can get over at makeshift.com for the next 21 days in celebration of this channel's 5-year anniversary. Thank you so much to Makeshift for making this happen. I appreciate it so much. That was what I intended to discover when I revisited the game that started it all for me. So now, 5 pages into this script as of writing this right now, I feel it's time we finally see how my feelings have changed about Five Nights at Freddy's 3. So, unlike my last 2 videos, I want to first talk about this game's presentation, as it's what stands out immediately upon playing the game to me, even above the story. Like I said earlier, FNaF 3 is made to be gross and grimy. Taking one look at your office, you are stationed in this nasty room lit completely with these green fluorescent lights. All around you are pieces of memorabilia from previous games, now broken and discarded to breathe life into this new horror attraction the game takes place in. Speaking of the setting, this game being a horror attraction perfectly lends itself to the most striking part of your office, the large window in front of you. See, the idea is that this office is meant to be a part of the show when people come and go from Fazbear's Fright. As they walk to the exit, they can look through this giant window in front of you to see you, a scare actor, frantically looking through the cameras. In the actual night gameplay, though, this gets flipped on its head, with this window now being used to show you if anyone is passing by to get to your office. Which, like, oh my god, one thing I need to gush about right away is how much I fucking adore this window. I said in my FNaF 2 revisit that the giant hallway in front of the player was insanely cool to me because of how it showed you who was coming and going from your office. This window is like that, but on steroids. There is nothing scarier to me than frantically flipping through cameras, trying your hardest to find where Springtrap went, only to lower it for a moment and just see the fucker standing out there staring at you. And it also just leads to these incredible moments where you're sitting there rebooting a system or checking the cameras, and you just see the shape of something dart by the window through the corner of your eye. This window is the coolest set piece in any FNaF game to me, and I will die on that hill. It is so incredibly well executed for this game's style of horror. Taking a step outside the best office in the series, we find ourselves on the cameras, which I also think are awesome. Because of the aforementioned horror attraction setting, gone are the party rooms and the show stages that we've seen before. The cameras in this game instead take the form of these long, twisting hallways where all of our beloved characters from the past have been turned into mere decorations. The entire building feels rotted and dead, as if we're playing from inside the corpse of what was once Freddy's long after everything up and died. It gives the game what I would describe as being an incredibly sinister tone compared to its predecessors, if that makes sense. Like, FNaFs 1 and 2 definitely felt like the atmosphere they wanted was something more eerie, what with their aesthetics and sound design, but with this one, the tone feels much more overtly evil with how it's designed, which I think is what lends to it being so appealing to me. This much can even be observed from the ambience with this one, with the sounds that play through the night having an incredibly malicious undertone to them. I mean, just listen to the ambience of FNaFs 1 and 2 and then compare it to 3. The difference is night and day. If the game that came before it was designed to evoke a feeling of chaos, FNaF 3 is the opposite, in that its atmosphere evokes this feeling of being trapped in this building with something evil that is trying to get to you at all costs. Which is a nice segue into easily the most iconic thing about this game's presentation, its main villain, Springtrap. I mean, what do I even say about this guy that hasn't been said already? Springtrap is perhaps the most beloved and iconic character in all of Five Nights at Freddy's, and it's for a good fucking reason. Taking one look at this guy's design, this genuinely might be the single coolest character Scott has ever made. A giant, rotten rabbit costume with even more humanoid proportions and holes all over his body, revealing what looks to be bits and pieces of gore and metal merged together into one. It's such a gruesome, morbid design compared to everything we'd gotten from the previous installments, and it blends in wonderfully with the environments of FNaF 3. This game feels like it was designed to complement his appearance, with Springtrap easily being able to blend in on the cameras and hide himself, which he will actively do. And it isn't just through his design that this character manages to scare the player, but also the way he's used in the game. Springtrap has probably the coolest presentation of any character in this series, with the way he moves around and behaves within FNaF 3's environment. The aforementioned camera renders are one thing, but when this dude gets to your office, there are so many little things he can do to freak out the player that works wonderfully. There's the previously mentioned running by the window, him having the chance to be barely seen peeking around the corner of your doorway when he gets there, him peeking his head from the side of the doorway, and perhaps my favorite instance of this dude fucking with you, how he interacts with your camera. See, one smaller detail that I think goes really underappreciated in this game is the fact that your camera doesn't actually take up the entire screen when you pull it up, instead taking up the right side of it. What this means is you have this small part of your office that is visible even when the camera's up, and the camera isn't designed in this way for no reason. That little bit of your office that's still visible allows for things like Springtrap darting by your window to be visible even when the camera's up. And it also allows for my favorite moment of horror in the game, Springtrap straight up walking into your office and being seen passing you by while the camera is up. This shit is a scarier jump scare to me than any of the actual jump scares in the game. Just seeing the thing you're looking for quietly dart past the camera is a horror so unique to FNaF 3, and it still gets me every time I revisit the game. Which is also why I just don't really care that Springtrap's jump scare is a little lackluster. Like, I remember especially when this game came out that people said Springtrap's jump scare was too slow or anticlimactic, so much so that Scott himself said in his interview that Dawko did with him a while back that it was one of the core reasons FNaF 4 was made, and I just don't really get it. Like, yeah, sure, the jump scare is slow, but to me, the jump scares in FNaF are never what made these games scary. It was the anticipation of them. And FNaF 3 excels at building tension and anticipation through all the little events that happen through the night with Springtrap. And besides, even if Springtrap's jump scare is a little meh, I can tell you with certainty that the other jump scares in this game are not. Because yeah, while Springtrap may be the only threat that can kill you in FNaF 3, he is not the only threat. Allow me to paint a picture for you here. You're on the second or third night of the game, and while Springtrap is certainly imposing, you feel like you've gotten used to his gameplay loop already. You open up the camera, ready to look for him, when suddenly you see something that isn't supposed to be there. Balloon Boy, at least that's what you think it is, in the corner of the camera staring at you. Before you even have a moment to process it, suddenly he's in your office and you've been jump scared. There's a brief moment of shock, you wait for the game over screen, but next thing you know, you're back in the regular gameplay loop, an alarm loudly blaring and your character hyperventilating. That was your first encounter with one of the Phantom animatronics, the other non-lethal threat that will be coming after you in this game, and I love them. These guys get a bit of a bad rep within the community for turning FNaF 3 into a jump scare simulator of sorts, being one of the only sets of enemies in the entire series capable of jump scaring you without killing you. But I never really saw the issue with this, because at the end of the day, you getting jump scared by these guys is still a consequence of your own actions, and what they add to this game's atmosphere is fucking incredible. The Phantoms being these grim hallucinations of characters from previous installments makes for such cool moments. Checking on the cameras and seeing BB there, lowering the camera and just seeing some weird warped version of Foxy standing in the corner of your office, Phantom Freddy just strolling by your window and jump scaring you if you stare for too long. The list just goes on, and the moments of panic it creates when one of these guys actually catches you is unparalleled to me. There is nothing more stressful than being caught out by a Phantom and having to sit in a blind panic, waiting for the ventilation to reboot while an alarm is blaring in your ears, you're slipping in and out of consciousness, you're hyperventilating, and on top of all that, once it's over and done, you will have no idea where Springtrap has gone. The Phantoms are an essential part of the experience and presentation of FNaF 3, and I love these guys to death because of it. I just love everything about this game's presentation. The way it looks, the way it sounds, the atmosphere, the tension, the characters. FNaF 3 is my ideal FNaF game aesthetically, and it's made only better when you start to look into the other aspects that make up this game. Because yeah, Springtrap and the Phantoms are scary on paper, a lumbering suit with a corpse in it and a bunch of ghostly versions of past characters, but what enhances it is how this game is actually designed around these characters and the way it allows the terrifying situations with them to happen. So it only feels right to talk about gameplay next. Taking one look at the gameplay of FNaF 3, it becomes immediately apparent what the design philosophy was: to create an experience that functions as the inverse of FNaF 2. While FNaF 2 was a game that attempted to create chaos with its roster of 11 animatronics and clashing mechanics, 3 attempts to be a much more personal experience with the player trying to fend off a single, very complex threat. Gone are the doors and mask of the previous games. In fact, gone in general is any means to defend yourself once Springtrap arrives in your office at all. If he gets to you, you're dead. Straight up. So that begs the question, how does one survive? Well, that is a bit of a complicated question to answer because FNaF 3 also goes out of its way to be a bit more mechanically intensive than the previous 2 installments. Equipped to your camera system is an audio lure, which when played will make Springtrap move to any room he is currently next to. You use this system to keep Springtrap as far away from your office as possible. Now, one might wonder, if that's all you need to do, then where does the challenge come in? A very good question. To stop the player from just luring Springtrap wherever they want all night, there are a couple of other mechanics that demand your attention. First of all, the reboot system. The tech you're using in this game is faulty and unreliable, frequently needing to be rebooted when it goes offline. Staying on the cameras too long? Yeah, they go black. Using too many audio lures? The button stops working. Spend too long without rebooting it or get jump scared by a phantom? The ventilation will go out, causing a fuck ton of bad things to happen. You already know about the alarm and the blacking out, but this system going down also makes it so that Springtrap becomes much more aggressive, you begin to see him everywhere you look, and on top of all that, you can't seal vents, which leads me to the next thing the player has to keep track of, the vent cameras. Yeah, this game flips what you know about FNaF on its head big time by having layered cameras this time around. One layer for the main building and another for the vents. When Springtrap enters a room with a vent, there is a chance he will enter said vent and attempt to use it to take a shortcut directly to your office. In order to stop this, you have to seal the vent either before or very quickly after he goes inside. So right away, with just Springtrap, you need to keep track of where he is at all times, making sure to preemptively seal vents and use your audio to lure him to your desired rooms, and on top of that, you need to make sure any important systems do not go offline in the process. A pretty complicated thing for a new player to grasp right away after the previous 2 games basically boiled down to, you see that guy?
Hi.
Closed door. And, you see that guy?
Hello.
Mask. Which is why one thing I really appreciate about FNaF 3 is actually the fact that the first night has literally no threats at all and goes by way faster. Each FNaF game's first night functions as a tutorial night of sorts, allowing the player to get their bearings with minimal threats. FNaF 3 is no different, with Springtrap literally not being in the building, so the player can try to get a handle on everything they need to use in a safe environment without the threat of death looming over them. It's nice, and what I love about the execution here is that Scott knew it would be boring for repeat playthroughs, much like the first night is in the previous 2 games, so this first night is considerably shorter than every other night in the game. It's a small thing, but it's a bit of game design I appreciate a lot. One thing I also love about the execution of this game's mechanics and Springtrap is how it feels like the game was specifically designed as an answer to the main critique myself and many others had with FNaF 2, that being the fact that the cameras felt useless outside of the music box. FNaF 3 is designed entirely around the cameras. They are how you stop yourself from dying. You are expected to search for Springtrap, to identify where he is, and to be proactive to ensure that he never gets to you, because you have no safe way to get rid of him once he's there. Combine that with the fact that this sneaky fucker likes to actively hide from you on the cameras, and you have a stressful gameplay loop that effectively recreates the highs felt from playing something like FNaF 1 for the very first time with added stakes. With all that said though, as much as I love this game and I want to only talk about the positives, I do have to say that while I love the approach here and Scott's attempt to make the cameras a core part of the gameplay, there may be a flaw in this design. That flaw being the fact that Springtrap's AI is a little exploitable. Yeah, so everything I just described to you, that crazy tension of trying to hunt Springtrap down and keep him away while every system you use is failing around you, that intended gameplay loop only really happens when you don't know how the game works. For those of you who don't know what I'm going to talk about, I apologize, for I'm about to ruin the magic of this game for you a little bit. So here's a picture of the FNaF 3 map, with these darker paths between cameras being the vents. This path here is the window in front of your office, which is a spot where Springtrap will be seen standing if he gets there. the player is allowed a split second to try and lure him over here to cam 2 if he's caught in time, which is a cool little mechanic on paper to try and save a run last minute. But with how this game's map is designed, it makes Springtrap incredibly easy and predictable to deal with. Cause you see, if Springtrap always goes back to cam 2 after this, and you seal the cam 2 vent, he only has a couple options. He can either aimlessly wander around between cams 2, 3, and 4 until coming back to your window, after which you lure him away again. He can go in the vent, which you already sealed, or he can go to cam 5 and potentially go to the vent there, which leads him right back in front of your window.
But Pastra, why can't he just roam to the other cameras and go in the vents there?
Well, dear viewer, there is a very good answer for that. You see, to make this game spookier and more intense throughout the night, Scott decided to have some special danger ambience that only plays when Springtrap has gotten close to your office. Here is a comparison between the regular ambience and that danger ambience. This danger track begins once Springtrap arrives at cam 5 and gets louder as he progresses to cam 2. What this means for us is that not only are we able to tell which camera he's at regardless of if we can see him, but we also know the moment the ambience stops that Springtrap has exited these cameras and we can lure him back. With all this in mind, we are essentially able to trap Springtrap in this little square for most of the night, with the audio being so accurate that we can track him without ever even needing to reboot our cameras. Now, of course, this isn't a strategy that most people are going to just stumble across on their own playthrough. It only really matters if you're attempting harder nights. And on top of that, it isn't foolproof. Springtrap's AI is not designed to listen to audio lures every single time. Sometimes he'll just ignore them. So while doing this strat, there will be moments where he just doesn't listen and books it down the hall anyways. I bring all this up not because I think it ruins the game or makes me like it less, but just because it felt like it was worth mentioning, considering the fact that it does feel like a large oversight that kind of defeats the point of what the game is going for. With that said though, it also doesn't really drag the experience down for me at all because A, it's a strategy that only really matters on later, harder nights where tracking Springtrap becomes a nightmare anyways, and B, Springtrap ain't the only threat in this game, which you may have forgotten because I deadass spent almost 10 minutes talking about him exclusively. Actually taking a look at the Phantoms, as you would have already guessed, these guys exist not to harm the player directly, but to make it easier for Springtrap to get to your office if you fail to deal with them correctly. Being caught out by a Phantom 9 times out of 10 comes at the cost of your ventilation, with them immediately causing it to shut down if any of them catch you. What I love about these guys from a gameplay perspective is that not only do they provide a deeper challenge to the game that doesn't steal away the spotlight from Springtrap, but also that each of them actually have an entirely unique mechanic. None of the Phantoms do the same thing, even the ones that seem similar on a surface level. And yeah, these guys aren't super dynamic threats, most of them are just a single mechanic you deal with, but I think the game easily makes up for that with how unique each of them are, as well as how complex Springtrap is by comparison. The first Phantom you will most likely encounter on any playthrough is Phantom BB, and his mechanic is the most simple, so it fits. Phantom BB will appear on a random camera, and if you look at him for too long without either swapping the camera or closing it, he will force your camera to drop and he will jump scare you. Phantom Chica, Mangle, and Puppet are triggered if you catch them when they appear on certain cameras and you don't swap away fast enough after seeing them. Phantom Chica, upon lingering too long, will jump scare you the next time you close the monitor. Phantom Mangle will appear in your window, creating an incredibly loud noise that not only makes it harder to hear audio cues, but also gives you an audio error. And Phantom Puppet will do what I consider to be the single creepiest mechanic out of all the Phantoms by slowly sliding into frame in your office, holding you in place while it stares you down and you're unable to do anything while it happens. This mechanic is so cool to me, I'm surprised it doesn't get talked about more often. With all the camera phantoms out of the way, that leaves us with the two phantoms that appear in your office, who also happen to be my two favorites, Phantom Freddy and Phantom Foxy. Phantom Freddy is really spooky, as I mentioned before, sometimes being seen strolling down the hall in front of your window. If you look at him for too long, he drops down and jump scares you. This guy in particular is one of the only FNaF animatronics that to this day is able to actually startle me with his jump scare because of the way he's designed. Cause like, very often, you'll have these moments where it's late into the night, Springtrap has slipped by, and bam, there he is at your door. And with the way Springtrap is designed, he cannot kill you while peeking through your door like this unless the ventilation goes out, you look away, or you lift the monitor. So very often, when in this position, people will just sit and stare, waiting for either the ventilation to go out or for the night to end. And that is where this cheeky son of a bitch rears his ugly head. Because if he spawns in your hall while you're doing this, not only does the game consider you to be staring at him, but because you don't see when he spawns, you have no idea when it's about to happen. It leads to these moments where you're laser focused on Springtrap and then bam, he just appears and makes your soul exit your body. It scares the shit out of me every time it happens. It's legit one of my favorite jump scares in the series. The other office animatronic, and honestly just my favorite phantom in the entire game, Phantom Foxy, is a lot more simple contrary to popular belief. This guy will appear in your office standing in front of the box of toy animatronics, and if you move too far into the office, he'll jump scare you. Now, the reason I said contrary to popular belief in regards to this guy's simplicity is that a lot of people have this weird misconception that this is an unavoidable jump scare. That Phantom Foxy, once he's spawned, will just jump at you no matter what. That is not true though, because if you see him and react in time, you can just open the monitor again and he'll be gone next time you check. Which is like 60% of the reason this dude is my favorite phantom. He makes me laugh so much every time I see him because when you're watching someone play the game, it just looks like this every time. I love all the phantoms and the roles they play in the game so much because I feel like they are incredibly well balanced around Springtrap and his core gameplay. In a game all about a singular, incredibly dynamic threat that requires your full attention at all times, having a bunch of other characters with that same complexity filling out the roster could easily have made the game feel very bloated and unfun to play. With these guys though, their mechanics are scary enough that you actively try to avoid them, but they aren't so demanding or complicated that they take attention away from the game's main threat. All of these guys and the way the office is designed around them just makes FNAF 3 such a solid gameplay experience to me. I know it isn't everyone's cup of tea, not everyone is a fan of the Phantoms and how they work, or the reboot system, or the RNG of Springtrap, but I don't know, these things never really bugged me because it always felt like this game just delivered on what I wanted from a FNAF experience. Hell, I wound up enjoying this one so much that I went ahead and beat its max mode just for fun, something I was told would be miserable, but I ended up having a great time with. If there were any critiques I'd have to say with FNAF 3, aside from the RNG of Springtrap's AI sometimes screwing you over, and the aforementioned exploits, which still don't really bother me, because I still think, even with the exploits in mind, FNAF 3's gameplay is more engaging than the later nights of FNAF's 1 and 2, it would just be what feels like a lack of content. This game, compared to the previous entries, just doesn't really have much once you beat the main story. Like, yeah, you get the extras menu and aggressive nightmare mode for the max mode, but after FNAF 2 gave us a whole custom night with little challenges, it feels weird that this game just didn't have any of that. I get that it probably has to do with the way the Phantoms were designed, but I don't know, it just feels like something is missing once you beat the game. Hell, not even all the Phantoms are visible on the extras menu you do get. Phantom Mangle just isn't there, and their spot's been taken up by Springtrap, but slightly closer up. I mean, like, okay. What I will say about this, though, is that while the post-game content of FNaF 3 is a bit lacking, it makes up for that by actually being one of the most replayable games in the entire series. Because after all is said and done, and you've beaten everything, you may notice that the game gives you a bad ending by default. That is because FNaF 3 has two completely different endings that you can try to get on multiple playthroughs, both of which offering a completely different outcome to this game's story. And speaking of that story, I think it's finally time we talk about it. Normally in these videos I like to do the lore first, but I felt given the fact that this game is built so much around a big mystery and twist, it was better to save it for last. So with all that said and done, let's discuss the story of Five Nights at Freddy's 3. The story of FNaF 3, as discussed prior, takes place 30 years after the closing of the Freddy Fazbear's from the original Five Nights at Freddy's. In this time, rumors and stories about the gruesome murders that took place at that restaurant had become sensationalized by the town in which they happened, leading to one very insensitive group of people wanting to make a buck off of it. Enter Fazbear's Fright, a horror attraction meant to capitalize on the dark history of Freddy's, featuring real, authentic props and decorations from the old, abandoned location. In this game, you play as a scare actor, hired for the role of the security guard that people would pass by as they make their way through the attraction. Maybe because you wanted some extra cash, or just because they couldn't find anyone else, you agree to stay at the location a week before its proper opening, acting as a real security guard to make sure nothing is stolen or people break in beforehand. Your first night on the job goes by quickly and harmlessly, with the phone dude telling you that they're on the lookout for anything authentic that could be used to really pull people in. A real animatronic from Freddy's, not just some prop or crappy cosplay. You clock in for your shift the next day and, well, it looks like they found what they were looking for. A real, rotten animatronic was discovered upon reopening some old, sealed-up room at the original Freddy's. A real animatronic whose identity is veiled in mystery and who now hunts you down relentlessly. This thing looks nothing like the animatronics we'd seen before. A nasty yellow coloration turned green from age and rot, more humanoid proportions than that of the cartoony mascots of the past, and holes in its body that reveal something grotesque that hides underneath. As the nights go by, we learn little tidbits about this animatronic and what it is through old vintage training tapes recorded by our good buddy Ralph, found in the same room the suit was stored in. We discover the costume was a specialized spring-lock suit, a cross between animatronic and costume. By using a hand crank, the metal parts could be pulled apart by a spring-lock system, allowing for entertainers to climb inside. They were supposedly used at the original Freddy's location and existed to maximize the immersion of any customers wanting to see the mascot entertainers. The suit, however, came with a very extreme risk to the safety of anyone wearing them. These spring locks were unstable, capable of snapping apart and breaking at any moment, causing the metal parts inside to violently snap back in place while the entertainer was still inside. Multiple accidents involving these suits had occurred, leading to the company discontinuing them and storing them inside a safe room that only the staff was made aware of. These suits, however, more specifically the Bonnie costume, would continue to be used. Reports of it being moved and customers being brought to this off-limits safe room began popping up across the location, and by night 6 it's mentioned that something had seemingly happened there that led to these safe rooms being sealed up completely. These phone calls already tell us a lot about Springtrap and what he is. A special suit that was so dangerous it was discontinued entirely, potentially with the body of one of the employees inside of it, and the suit used by the purple guy from FNaF 2 to carry out the murders of 5 children in the safe room. All of that is disturbing information on its own, but that still begs the question of who it is inside of it. Who was the unfortunate individual who lost their life and now haunts the suit that hunts us down? Well, the answer to that question can be found in the minigames that play between nights. Yeah, the minigames from FNaF 2 are back here, no longer hidden away as Easter eggs, but this time front and center. In these minigames, we take turns each night, playing as one of the classic animatronics, following Shadow Freddy until we arrive at a room we can't enter. The safe room, which was specifically designed so that the animatronics could not see it. Attempting to leave causes the purple guy to lunge out of the darkness, dismantling the animatronics and leading to the next night. This cycle repeats for 4 of the 5 nights, with us seeing each animatronic from FNaF 1 destroyed until night 5 where something different happens. Now we play as a ghost, the ghost of the 5th murdered child who makes their way to the safe room alone. There we find the purple guy cornered and terrified by the ghosts of his previous victims. We chase him, and in a desperate attempt to ward off the spirits, he dons the same suit he used to take their lives. For a moment, it seems like it worked. The ghosts stop in place, frozen. He lets out a laugh, but in an instant, the spring locks snap and the metal parts within the costume collapse all at once. The purple guy is killed inside the suit, and the spirits fade away. Springtrap wasn't a victim like the other characters of the previous games. He wasn't an innocent soul taken too soon. This entire time we've played through FNaF 3, we have been fending off the same child murderer that caused the original 2 games to happen. And you know what sucks? What genuinely makes me sad about all this? The fact that you already knew this. I've had a similar bit in each of these videos where I recap lore that's already been known for a decade and then put a funny spin on it, but this time around, it genuinely makes me a bit sad to realize that, yeah, this twist is something everyone watching this will already be aware of. Because to me, this twist was the single craziest moment to ever experience as a FNaF fan. FNaF 3's entire marketing, the theory side of things before it came out, it was all about the mystery of Springtrap's identity. Every teaser, every frame of the trailer, every moment in game spent before this minigame was meant to make you question just who this guy was until that final, silent reveal that the killer from the previous 2 games and Springtrap were one and the same. What makes me so sad about this twist is that it was so iconic, so talked about after FNaF 3 that it became legit one of the first things anyone would learn about the series. Springtrap, for very good reason mind you, became probably the most popular FNaF character of all time, and each game after this would expand upon his character further to the point that it was common knowledge that he and the killer were one and the same. And do I think that's a bad thing? No, of course not. It's only natural that a fantastic concept such as this would be expanded upon, and it makes sense that people would want to talk about it. What makes me sad is just the fact that nobody who plays this series anymore will really get to experience the magic of playing this game blind ever again, of opening up that first night and seeing that nobody was there, of seeing Springtrap, hearing descriptions of the horrible suit he's made from, and letting your imagination wander, guessing who could be in it, of getting to that final minigame and having your entire experience recontextualized in the most horrifying way possible. FNaF 3 truly was built around the blind experience, and nobody will have that again. But on a lighter note, that does not in any way detract from just how good this story is. FNaF 3's narrative is just my favorite in the series. It always has been. I just always found there to be something so beautifully poetic about it. These children who could never find peace after their death, being put in the same position yet again, being lured into the same room by the same man and being attacked. Only this time, they had the strength to fight back, and in doing so, they forced upon him the same horrible fate they were given. The killer's weapon had become his tomb, his face. And now, 30 years after the closing of Freddy's, we're forced to face him down ourselves. It's just, oh my god, it's such fantastic writing and acts as such a phenomenal end to the story of the MCI children and their killer. Having the main villain of the series turned into one of the monsters that can hunt you down is such a marvelous concept that is handled so perfectly here, because it even translates itself perfectly into the core gameplay of FNaF 3. Springtrap's animations, the way he hides on the cameras, hell, even his jump scare animation where he walks into the room. All of it makes him feel so much more aware and intelligent than the threats in the previous 2 games. You aren't just outright told he's something completely different than the other animatronics. You can easily infer it just by playing the game. Good old show don't tell how I love you. And even outside of Springtrap, the way this game handles the fate of the 5 missing children is done with a lot of grace as well. Because after this moment, when the children fade away and Springtrap is born, what happens to them after is actually dictated by the player. See, one thing I neglected to mention about these little mini games is that in every single one there is this corridor that has hints and clues about things you can do in the following night. Double-clicking a BB poster, entering a code on the arcade machines, etc., etc. Following these clues like a to-do list will give you access to a plethora of different minigames where you play as characters from different points in the franchise. All of them are just seemingly innocent games like the FNaF 2 death minigames were, but purposely going out of bounds reveals their true nature to you. Hidden in every single one of these minigames is one of the missing children crying on their own, and finding them allows you to give them a cake, which abruptly brings the minigame to an end. If you manage to find them all and double-click the puppet drawing found on one of the cameras, it brings you to this special minigame. Happiest Day, where the final spirit, the spirit of Golden Freddy, sits at the end of the table crying. We play as the spirit of the puppet, who gives the child his cake, allowing all of them to share a happy moment together that they had all been robbed of the night they died. And with that, they pass on, their spirits free, and we get the good ending, or as the game simply puts it, the end. This good ending to me and to many others is the best possible ending that the MCI victims could have had, sharing one last moment together, giving up their rage and vengeance, and moving on to let their killer rot all alone. Well, not entirely alone, actually. Because you see, one who is very astute will notice that at the end of this little minigame, the puppet's mask falls slower than the others. And as well as that, I may have led y'all a bit astray earlier when talking about gameplay. You remember when I said that the phantom puppet was triggered by seeing it on the hallway camera like the other camera phantoms? This wasn't entirely true. Because you see, in actuality, taking a look at that render reveals to you that this isn't the phantom puppet, but rather the real puppet who is in Fazbear's Fright for real. A detail you have probably already tried to correct me on in the comments if you didn't watch this far. I know what you are. Delete it. What the puppet is doing here is unclear. Perhaps she has unfinished business. Maybe she's there to watch over Springtrap and ensure he continues to suffer like the others. Who knows? But what's important here is that the puppet's presence tells us one big thing about this game. While it seems like a pretty straightforward experience that ties up the loose ends of the first 2 games in a nice bow, it still has its own special mysteries and Easter eggs to keep people talking. There is, of course, the puppets' involvement, but there are also characters at play here that deeply fascinate me. Why is Shadow Freddy guiding the animatronics to be destroyed? Why does he randomly appear in your office? Why is Shadow Bonnie one of the entities helping the dead children during the good ending minigames? What are all these spooky entities we'd see out of bounds when playing those secret minigames? Why are they back? While FNaF 3 didn't go as nuts as the previous 2 installments with its Easter eggs and secrets, there was still more than enough here that the community could use for their theories and discussions, making it a perfect endpoint for this arc of the story of sorts. Hell, even the phantoms, who are usually chalked up as being hallucinations, have some interesting implications to them as well. These guys' designs always fascinated me because of the texturing Scott chose to give them. A nasty, burnt texture as if their shells had been lit aflame. One might wonder what the point of this is until beating the game's 6th night, where we see that right before its opening, Fazbear's Fright actually burnt to the ground. The entire place destroyed, most likely due to faulty wiring. Whether or not this has some kind of deeper meaning, I always thought it was cool how these designs foreshadow this event without the player even realizing it until after the game has been completed. And said event to me just adds to this game's feeling of finality, if not for the series, then for this era of the games. FNaF 3's narrative, now that I've laid it all out for you here, hits as hard for me as it does because it almost frames itself as the final boss of the franchise. You're locked in a one-on-one scenario with the series' main villain in a rotting carcass of a building decorated with the remains of characters long gone, and by the end of it, it all goes up in flames. The souls of the children are set free, and after everything, Springtrap is shown to have survived and still be out there. Such an awesome ending. Now, with all that said, do I think that FNaF 3 should have been the end of the franchise like I said all those years ago? Fuck no. I may love this game as an ending, but I also love what we got after a lot and would never want to sacrifice it for this. It's great, my favorite bit of writing in the franchise, but I also don't think that it was the be-all end-all of FNaF, you know? If anything, I just view it as the ending to this part of the story. The MCI children getting laid to rest and leaving their killer to share their fate until the story of the next couple games. No matter what, later entries and theories would try to tell me. Which is why FNaF 3 is going in God tier. Yeah, I had to give this game a tier of its own just for this series because you guys have no idea just how much making this video made me realize that this is just one of the most important games to me that has just ever been made. Like, while I was in the middle of writing this script, sure, I expected to like FNaF 3 still. I didn't expect to have like a crazy turnaround on it like I did with FNaF 2, but like, as I was writing the script for this game, I felt all of the passion and excitement I had towards it back when I made that first FNaF 3 video. It all just came back to me all at once. Writing that script and making this video made me so incredibly giddy, it was crazy. And then on top of that, just revisiting and replaying the game, like, outside of just my own sentiment, I just realized that this is my ideal FNaF experience. This game, the way it looks, the way it feels, the gameplay, the characters, the story, all of it is just, this is my perfect FNaF. This game did so much for me on like a personal level. It is just super appealing to play. Out of all the FNaF games, this is the one that I want to actively go back to and just play for fun, which I can't really say the same about like FNaF 1, which I put in S tier. Like, I love this game a lot, it's great, but I'm not actively going out of my way to constantly play FNaF 1, unlike with 3, and 2, I mean, I don't even like playing 2. You guys already know that. It's just, man, I love FNaF 3 so much. This game means so much to me, man. I'm so happy I got to make this video. Anyway, let's move on to the animatronics tier list before I rant too long about the game here. All right, so here we are at the animatronic side of things, and I'm just gonna say right off the bat that this is probably going to be one of my most controversial tier list sections for any of these videos. Because, I mean, obviously you watch this video up to this point, you know that I actually adore the Phantoms so much. I feel like I am probably the #1 Phantom Glazer out of the entire FNaF fandom. So I'm gonna be putting these guys like way higher on this tier list than most people would ever imagine putting them. I guess getting right into it, we got the phone dude. I mean, he's kind of funny, but I don't really like him particularly more or less than Ralph, our good old classic phone guy. So I feel like these two belong in the same tier together. Also, it's kind of funny that they look like they're having a conversation between each other here. Springtrap. Man, okay. Making this video specifically, it reminded me of a lot of things I loved about FNaF 3, but more than anything else, making this video reminded me that this guy right here, Springtrap, is legit just like probably my favorite character in the entire series, and he is legit one of my favorite characters in fiction. Like, that feels like a bit crazy to say, but genuinely, Springtrap means more to me than so many other characters. Cause like, in my original FNaF 3 video, I point out the fact that like, this guy was like, I think in the original FNaF 3 video, I point out that this guy is like my favorite video game villain ever. If you were to ask me who my favorite video game character is, my answer would be Springtrap. And as well as that, this character has had so much influence on me in so many ways I didn't realize until I was working on this video. A prime example was that I had been so excited when FNaF 3 was coming out to see this character and learn what his story was, that little like 11-year-old me, or I would have been 12 I guess at the time, genuinely sat down, went on MS Paint, and with a mouse I drew my first ever piece of digital artwork, and it was a drawing of Springtrap. And on top of that, I was so excited about this drawing of Springtrap that I had made on MS Paint, because it was my first time ever drawing something digitally, that I went to an old YouTube channel and I made like a Springtrap like AMV tribute video, again, before the game came out. And it was just this slideshow of like, you know, random stolen fan art that I found on DeviantArt, and like a random FNaF fan song. And I made that video just so I had an excuse to put my Springtrap fan art I drew in it. And that video, that random little shitty slideshow that I made just to show off my Springtrap fan art, that was the first video I ever made on YouTube that actually gained a significant amount of views. And I remember little me was just so excited by that I felt like being a YouTuber was possible. It made me feel like I could pursue that dream, even if, you know, it took a while for that to be a reality. So my love of this character, of Springtrap from Five Nights at Freddy's, is not only the reason why I started doing digital art, it was the thing that inspired me to continue trying with YouTube, and then my big final attempt at becoming a YouTuber was by making a FNaF 3 video that was largely about Springtrap, and now here we are talking about FNaF 3 again 5 years later after my original FNaF 3 video blew up. And I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional just like talking about this. Just, this character means so much to me. You know, honestly, we're gonna do what we did with the FNaF game tier list. We're gonna add a row above. We're gonna give Springtrap his own god tier as well, because like, this character means so much to me, man. And I can't believe it took making these videos for me to realize just how important he is to me. God, I love Springtrap. Okay, man, other characters on the tier list. Phantom Freddy, I love this guy. I think Phantom Freddy is another S tier animatronic, which I know the S tier is like super, super top heavy on this tier list, but you can't be mad at me. You can't be mad at me. I think the animatronics in FNaF are cool, okay? Phantom Chica. I know I like my Chica variants, but I feel like Phantom Chica is one of my lesser favorite Phantoms because she doesn't do much to stand out to me. I feel like she's like a B tier. I'd put her like right there. Phantom Foxy, this guy is my favorite Phantom in the entire game. I already said that. He goes up here in S tier. He's like probably my favorite Foxy variant. I love Phantom Foxy a lot. Is that weird? Is it weird to have Phantom Foxy as my like favorite Foxy variant? I feel like I'm the only person in existence who's ever said that, but I really, really like Phantom Foxy. Phantom Mangle, I'm gonna be honest, Phantom Mangle kind of annoys me a bit. Because like the noise they make is like really overstimulating for me. Although it's not nearly as bad as I remember it. They're like a C tier. Phantom Balloon Boy is like iconic to FNaF 3. I think he's like an A tier animatronic. I really, really like Phantom BB. His friggin' like jump scare where he like jumps at the player and like his model actually stretches for his mouth to open all weird. It's super cool to me. And Phantom Puppet, this one is like another A tier animatronic. Man, me putting the Phantom Puppet above the regular puppet is gonna piss some people off, but like, I don't know, I think their mechanic is so incredibly sick. The way they just hold you in place and stare you down while you just can't do anything, it freaks me out, man. I love it. And the Phantom, where the fuck do I put the Phantom Cupcake? I forgot you even existed. Like D tier? I mean, like, you literally just exist to access a minigame. And yeah. Okay, so there is our animatronics tier list for Five Nights at Freddy's 3. We will continue this with FNaF 4. Feel free, as always, to flame me in the comments for my shitty-ass opinions. Until next time, enjoy the conclusion of the video. Bye-bye! But yeah, with all that said and my opinions about the lore laid out, I think you all know what's coming next. I mean, I expected to like this game again on Revisit, but I guess I'd forgotten just how much it means to me until I really sat down and started writing this video. FNaF 3 was just the foundation for so many of my interests I have nowadays. It is my favorite looking FNaF game, my favorite to play. It has the most compelling narrative, my favorite characters. In every way this could be my favorite FNaF game, it just is. But yeah, this video was quite a ride to make. I got to rekindle my love for the game that started basically everything for me. My digital art, my aspirations as a creator, and of course the channel you see now. I think being able to post this on the 5-year anniversary of this channel is going to be such a wonderful thing for me because it's really going to show both how much I've changed over these years and, in the most important ways, how a lot of things have just stayed completely the same. If you're watching this and were one of the people that checked out that old FNaF 3 video back when I first made it, I appreciate you sticking around with me for as long as you have. This whole YouTube journey for me has had its ups and downs, certainly, but it's not something I would ever give up for anything in the world. Getting to grow alongside my content has been a surreal experience, and now I'm at a point where I feel really content with where I'm at. I don't imagine there's going to be any big or drastic changes from here on. I'm happy with things exactly as they are. What the fuck?